So now that we have the general project introduction out of the way and we have an idea of what we're going to build, let's actually go through the process of creating the same About Me page from the initial hello world.html that I showed you guys how to create earlier. So again, your page is going to look something like this. And this is the HTML that we're going to use to start it out. So I'm going to split my screen between these two and kind of be going between them as we work on these, as I work on the website. So if I look at the website, what do I see? I see a bunch of these little less than signs, things in the middle, and then greater than signs after that. So that's known as an HTML tag. So the easiest way to kind of reason about this is to start by creating a very basic HTML tag. And then one of the easiest ones to do is the P tag, and this stands for a paragraph. So there's a couple components involved in this paragraph tag. Let me increase my font size real quick, and we can get started. So in the paragraph tag, there's the following. You have a less than sign that you type, the letter P, and then a greater than sign. This is what is defining the tag and kind of opens up the tag. So now, if I were to type that, there would be nothing that shows on my web browser. I need to actually have some text or some content inside of this tag. So to put content inside of the tag, we need to type the text that we want to put on the page between this opening tag and its corresponding closing tag. So the closing tag is going to look very similar to this opening tag, except that it's going to have a / in front of the P. So what do I mean by that? It is going to be a less than sign, a /, a P, and then a greater than sign. And that is going to be an opening tag and then a closing tag. So now the content goes right in the very middle. So if I type in the middle here, hello world, my content can now show, my website will now show me the words hello world inside of a paragraph. So that is the general gist of how it works. We have the opening tag, the contents, and then we have the closing tag. When taken as a whole, this is called an element, an HTML element. And as we're about to learn pretty soon, you can have HTML elements inside of other HTML elements. This is something that is called the document object model. So this concept is a little bit hard to grasp right now since you're just now getting started with web development. But what the document object model is it is a way of representing the structure of a web page inside of the memory of a computer. So if I go into hello world.html, we see the following. We have our Doctype Html. What does that even mean? I'll get to that in just a second. And then we have some tags here like HTML, we have head, we have meta, then we have this title tag, and then there's body, and there's this h1 tag. And what is happening here? So if I look at this document, the HTML tag is the root node of the entire HTML document, right? And inside of it, there are other nodes as well. So HTML has a head inside of it, head has a meta tag, and also a title inside of it as well. But notice how inside of the HTML, you can kind of like collapse it in my editor and see that they kind of are nested inside of each other. So this is what I mean by HTML elements can be put inside of other elements. For the purposes of our first website, all that we really care about is the following three tags. There's the HTML tag, which is your, hey, this is an HTML document. Then we have the head tag, which specifies information associated with your web page. So this is information that is kind of about your web page. And this is something called metadata. It's not the actual data of your page, but it's just information about it. So an example of metadata could be something like a photograph, which has information about it like the size of the photograph. The photograph's data is its actual pixel values, but its metadata is information like what camera you used, the size of the photograph, and the name of it, and other different things as well. So in our case, we have a one metadata tag here, which has character set equals UTF-8. Now, this probably doesn't mean anything to you if you're a beginning programmer, but what it does is it specifies that the character set for the computer is a UTF-8 encoding. Now, we'll get more into that later. It's just kind of required to put our web browser in what is called standards mode. And then we have the title tag here. In the title tag, we define the contents that will appear at the very top of the tag. So in our example here, it says my web page at the very top, or this one's going to say my first web page. Inside of the body tag, we have an H1. So this is where the meat of the website kind of all comes together. The body tag is what contains all of the contents that appear on the page. So just as we said earlier, title is information about your page. That'll be something like my first web page that would appear up here at the very top. And the character set is something that you're not actually going to ever see on your page. Inside of the body is where all the magic happens. So this web page just simply says hello world. Let me open it in Finder real quick. Yep. So this guy just says hello world, right? And what's interesting about this is that the H1's here and it's a header, right? So if I were to add some more content right below it, it would appear right below it just as you would expect in a normal text document. So let's add a paragraph and say, I'm getting started with HTML. And so this is the opening tag again. This is the content. And now I need to simply close the tag out /p. And if I were to save this file, I can then reload the file here in my browser and I can see clearly I'm getting started with HTML. So that is kind of like what is going on here. Another thing to note that I kind of glossed over too is that you're allowed to have what's called white space. This HTML tag, it starts on line number 2 and it closes on line number 11. So what is happening here? This white space is simply stuff that is put there by us programmers to make the website or the web page easier to read as we edit it and do different stuff to it, you know? Because we can have lines like line number 8, we could have them all pretty much on the same line if you really wanted to, but it would just be a really hard thing to read. And a common convention or way of formatting your website is like so. We have the HTML tag at the very root and it's indented all the way to the very left. And then every time that you put an element inside of it, you indent one level. And then all the elements that will go inside of each corresponding element will have another level of indentation after that. So because head is inside of the HTML tag, it is indeed over one level of indentation. The meta and title are also one level of indentation over as well. The body is also part of the HTML tag, so it shares the same indentation as the head tag. And you can see as well here with the body's contents that they are also indeed one level of indentation over. So that is the very basics of HTML and how these tags work. So we've kind of seen how altogether the document structure kind of plays out and how it all kind of looks to us. So there was one more thing that I meant to talk about, and that is the very top of this page. This exclamation point doctype HTML. What this does is it is a string which specifies the kind of document that we are dealing with to the computer, to the web browser, basically. And the web browser knows that this is an HTML document and it should interpret it as such. By putting this at the very top of our document and by including this meta character set equals UTF-8, we are putting a web browser in standards mode, which is what allows us to work with HTML in a very well understood way. So there's a good document here that you can read about it, about quirks mode and standards mode here in the Mozilla Developer Network. So I have included a link in the tutorial in part 1, so go ahead and give it a read. It kind of explains why this is recommended and what we should do to use this guy. So now that we have the very the very basic understanding of how HTML tags work. In our next video, we will actually build out the rest of the site from our Hello World site and kind of create an About Me page from there. Thanks for watching.